times when we were above 30% as a positivity rate in the county, but we stayed full in person. That's how I set up my room. And, just so if they're contact traced, there's only one person on either side of them. And then I can stand up here. We played, football and volleyball and cross country was pretty much full go. As many fans as you can hold.
Welcome to Teachers for Open Schools. I'm Stephanie, a New York City educator and teacher for open schools, and I am overjoyed to be here with another teacher from open schools, Jerome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for reaching out. Thanks for having me. Happy to help.
Yeah, and it's so awesome to connect with other educators who are also advocating for open schools. I know it's not necessarily the most popular position, and we're definitely grateful for people, especially teachers who have been back in the school for, you said, since August now, right?
August.
To share their experience. And we know teachers have a lot of fear. I mean, I was scared myself when I was going back in the classroom for hybrid at the beginning of the year. So we would just love for you to share your experience with us and help us kind of cut through those fears and get back in the classroom with our kids. So before we get to that, and you're actually in your classroom, you're going to give us a little sneak peek.
Yep.
Can you just tell us a little bit about your professional background, where you're teaching, and what your school's like?
Yeah. So this is my 11th year of teaching. I teach in Iowa, Haywarden, Iowa. West Sioux is the school. We're a pretty small town, about, a little under 3,000 people in our whole district. Our county, I think, has 36,000 or 30,000 people, somewhere around there. And our whole county has been full in person, the whole time, irregardless of the percentage in the county. I know that schools across the state were able to apply to go hybrid or to go online if they got above a certain percent. But I think there was times when we were above 30% as a positivity rate in the county, but we stayed full in person. I think our whole county stayed in person, full in person school the whole time. And like our school, we had lower absence rates than a normal year. We were at our highest, we're a little over 3%. The last I even checked it, I've quit checking it. The last I checked it was right before Christmas, and it was under 1% absence rate. And that's an absence rate for everything, regardless of why they're gone. So that's pretty abnormal for any fall for our kids. So I just think the kids want to be back. They missed it. They missed their friends, and so that was good to see. But yeah, that's my background. And I also coach football, basketball, and track at the high school level. And I teach, I don't know if I already said that, but I teach middle school science, 6th and 7th grade. So that's my background.
And what's interesting too is you said, I was going to ask about like the in-school positivity rate, but it's obviously very low if you're having 1% kids missing for any reason. And yep. I guess you guys have been playing sports and everything too.
Yep. Yeah. In the fall, we played, football and volleyball and cross country was pretty much full go. As many fans as you can hold. The last couple weeks, right before Christmas, they limited the attendance at basketball games. They never shut down any high school basketball games, but they limited attendance before Christmas for a few weeks to just 2 family members per player. And then after Christmas opened it back up. So now it's as many as you would want, as long as they're attempting to social distance and mask. And so it's really awesome for the kids to get to play sports and get to interact with each other and have fun.
I know people still do that. It's like,
yes. And that's the other reason. Oh, I know. The biggest reason I wanted, when you reached out and I was kind of hesitant at first, but when I respond to people on Twitter or on anything, I'm met with like, oh, that's not real. He's just talking, that's not real. I'm like, there's people that legitimately didn't believe me at Christmas. I went to a Christmas in Minnesota and they literally did not believe that we were full in person. And I mean, it's less than 2 hours away and they didn't believe it. And so I thought that I would, take this opportunity to kind of say that, because there are people that don't believe that we've been back in school.
And so I know you're a little bit smaller district, but
Yep.
you went to Minnesota and you went to a place where it's a similar situation demographic wise as you, and they aren't open.
Yeah, and they aren't open. So
It's even, I know a lot of people say, well, I'm in New York City and that's a rural place. We can even see from similar districts in similar situations, there's something that's preventing from keeping us from opening. And so I have two questions. A, more about how you feel about opening and pretty much being, back to normal-ish.
yeah.
And then the other side of that is, how did this happen? Is this a state thing? Is this like your local school's decision? What are the politics that are surrounding it and allowed you to get back in person, and teachers in your district and state to not seemingly have so much fear as places even right next door?
Yeah, and that's what's kind of crazy is, with anything, you're going to gravitate to what you already believe in. And so if you believe that it's going to be bad and it's going to be awful, I tell my kids all the time, if you've got negative thoughts going into it, it's going to be terrible, like with anything in life. And so I think that places have had that thought and have not really, given it a go, because of that. And there definitely was some doubt. There definitely was some fear at the beginning. But at the end of the day, in each individual place, I feel like we've made the decision, not because, and there's people who talk to me that are like, oh, you guys just don't think it's real. Oh, we know it's real 100%. And there are fears, but we also know, one of the things that kept sticking in my mind was I still had to take the mandatory reporter training. Well, when they throw out those stats during that mandatory reporter training of, 600,000 instances of child abuse each year, and half of those, depending on where you read, are reported by teachers. And I could not get that out of my mind. Like, who's reporting those now?
Right.
It's
It's one factor that we need to consider when we're doing policy.
yeah. And I think people assume, oh, you just don't believe in it. Then no, that's not it. We realized that there was a chance that we could come back to school and that some bad things could happen. But we knew for a fact that there are bad things happening to these kids at home, that the amount of lives that I've seen changed in 1 year of a normal year, for good or bad, is crazy. And the amount of good that can happen in 1 year, one relationship. I think about the relationships I had coming from a good background. I can't even imagine in a place where you don't have a good home life. I'll admit it. I probably would have loved quarantine. I would have been on the farm, playing basketball with my brothers, farming with my dad. But that's not the reality for a lot of these kids. For a lot of the kids, it was miserable. Their parents are working, they're looking after their siblings and trying to Zoom. When it comes down to it, I think you just got to realize that schools are for kids. Schools aren't for teachers. Schools are for kids. That's what it's for. And we have, the joy of being paid to teach these kids, but it's for them. It's not really for us. And that's kind of the way I looked at it.
So tell us some of the things that you are doing in your school. Like you're in your classroom, which I thought this was like your home office. I was like, and then that's actually the corner of your classroom.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how you do have your classroom, because like you said, you guys understand it's real. So what are some of those measures you guys are taking, and how has your school/district helped see from the teacher's perspective? Because I think that's one of the big things too, is like teachers don't feel like they're being heard. So tell us a little bit more about your classroom and what your district's doing, for teachers and making them feel safe.
So we've been encouraged to, the downside is, we've been encouraged to try to stay away from pods where they're facing each other. Although I think it's, as we've gone further and further, we're at day, I think 90 or 92, something like that. And so it's obviously changed since we've been going this whole time, and it's been going so well. It's getting, there's times where I forget after a few days that it's not normal. And that, so like, this is how I set up my room. And, just so if they're contact traced, there's only one person on either side of them. And then I can stand up here. If that, and that's kind of how I thought of it the first time. And then they encourage us to have alphabetical seating, which isn't the funnest thing for kids. And there's obviously, I can't put a couple kids next to each other because they're knuckleheads, but that way, let's say, I sit on the end next to the same person in 3 classes. Well, that's 2 less people that would need to quarantine for 10 days. And a lot of times it doesn't, I mean, you're changing classes, so it's not perfect, but
Mm.
even if it's 1 less kid, quarantining healthy, because that's the thing that gets me is like, if they're sick, great. I mean, not great, but obviously they have to quarantine, but it's the quarantining of the healthy kid next to them that hurts my heart, because those kids want to be here. And I have never even one time seen a kid who had to quarantine, even though they were healthy, come back and be like, that was awesome. I mean, it's not something that they want to do. They want to be in school.
So what about teachers? Have you had, because that's another issue is staffing.
Yep.
How has the staffing been? Have you seen any more spread among teachers? I know we mentioned the student absentee rate, but how is it for teachers?
For teachers, definitely there's been a few teachers that have gotten it. We were kind of lucky. There was never a huge chunk at one time. I mean, there was still a few weeks early in the year and in the fall where we had a little bit of issue with subs, and I would cover a class or two or in a week during my prep, and we'd kind of cover for each other. It was more about subs, but we're actually a district that's typically pretty low on subs anyway.
Okay.
But that was more the issue than anything. But yeah, I mean, obviously, you've got people who are married to doctors and nurses, and I mean, if you think about it, there's very, very few jobs that are legitimately able to stay home in quarantine. And that's another reason why I felt a little bit selfish, sitting at home being safe when my kids and their parents weren't able to do that.
Right.
And that's another thing that, I'll be honest, it irritates the heck out of me. Makes me angry.
Yeah, a lot of the, essential workers, healthcare workers, they're having to juggle so many different things now because they're working, they're at heightened risk, and they have to, their kids in school one day, or they're not in school, or they're not in school altogether. So we're really asking these people who are doing so much to do just that much more. So as we wrap this up, I was just wondering, what do you have to say to a teacher who's headed back into the classroom and who might be nervous? What words of advice do you have for them?
I truthfully believe when you see the kids, when you see how happy they are, I don't know if you will feel the same way as you do right now. I just don't think you will. I didn't know how many kids we don't mandate masks, and at this point it's rare if you see a mask per period even. But early I didn't know, and that's why I set it up this way. I wanted to be able to stand up front far enough away that they could see me smile, and I wanted to see them smile. And I just think when you see those kids, it's going to be hard for you to think about anything other than this is the right thing for them. That's my own personal opinion. I'm not saying I'm right, but that's what I think that you will do.
Me personally, like I said, I was ready to go back, but it's not like I wasn't scared at all. But once you get out there and you start interacting with the kids, it helps break through that fear that's so easy to have when you're sitting at home and watching TV and scrolling through social media all day. And isolated, when you're not having, I just like feel sad sometimes. I'm like, I want to go talk to
Yeah. And
somebody.
we are adults who have it all together. Or what I mean, imagine being 12. Imagine being like there are things that are guaranteed to increase depression, anxiety, thoughts of suicide, and those things are isolation, screen time, and just loneliness in general, and lack of exercise. I mean, those are legitimately things that everyone knows, those increase thoughts of suicide, anxiety, and depression. And that's exactly what's happening. And when they get to come back,
The academic learning loss, that's so.
yeah, I mean, not even mentioning that, just the fact, just the isolation and just, I just, it's so good for them to be back. We have a basketball game tonight. I should probably get going. Our C team is warming up right now, and then JV, then varsity. And I was talking to the other coach, and we hardly even talk basketball. We're just like, I'm so glad our kids get to play. We're so glad that our kids get to play and interact with each other. And it's just pretty cool to see.
And I'm so happy for you and your kids, and best of luck in your basketball game. And just thank you so much for sharing your story. This isn't just about teachers who in places where schools are closed. We need those voices to shine through, of teachers who have been there, who have done it, and who are making it happen. So again, thank you so much, and go kick some butt in your games tonight.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Thanks for reaching out.